The time is 6:30 PM and the Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Tuesday, May 17th, 2016 is now called to order, and we do have a quorum present. First item is approval of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2016 meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, may I have a motion to approve as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve by Mary Ellen, seconded by Alvin. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 3 is public hearings for consent agenda for plats. There is a 3A and a 3B. We'll read both of them together. Staff will discuss both of them, and then we'll have one public hearing to vote on both unless there's an objection by staff, by commission, or by public. So 3A is the final plat of Infinite Packaging Edition, Lot 1, Block A. This is a 4.921 acre tract. It's zoned light industrial, L1. It's located on the southeast quadrant of Valley Ridge Circle and Valley Ridge Boulevard, being a replat of Valley Ridge Business Park East, lots 5R-A and lot 5R-B of Block A. The second one is final plat of DFW Recycling and Disposal Facility Edition. This is lots 3R-1, 4R-1, and lot 6, Block A. Being a 130.72 acre plot, it's zoned SU mining, special use, and special use landfill accessory uses, located on the northeast quadrant of Hebron Parkway and Railroad Street, being a replat of DFW Recycling and Disposal Facility Edition, lots 3R and 4R, Block A. June?
Good evening. Good evening, Commissioners. There are two plats on the agenda to be considered for approval. There are no variances requested, and staff recommends that Planning and Zoning Commission approve the plat as presented.
Okay. Commissioners, questions?
No.
Okay, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak on A or B, please come forward, sign in, and state your name. All right, having no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, comments, questions, anything? All right, may I have a motion on items A and B together?
So move.
Motion by Alvin,
Second.
seconded by Mary Ellen. Those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4 is regular hearing for plats. 4A is preliminary plat of Castle Hills, Rim West, lots 1 through 17, 18X, 19 through 22, 23X, 24 through 32, and 33X. It's Block A, and this is lots 1X, 2 through 10, 11X, 12 through 23, Block B. Lots 1 through 9 and 10X, Block C, lots 1 through 12, Block D. Designated Estate Townhouse, ETH, and lots 1 and 2, Block E. Designated General Business, GB2, located on 18.09 acres, south side of State Highway 121, between Castle Hills Drive and Essex Boulevard, with 4 associated variances.
Commissioners, this is a plat on the agenda for consideration for a preliminary plat for Castle Hills Realm West. Staff has reviewed and it meets all the minimum ordinance requirement with exception of 4 variances that are being requested. Our Associate City Engineer Jeff Kelly is here to give you an overview of the variances that are being requested.
Thank you, June.
All right, good evening. Yes, we have 4 variances on this plat associated with the plat there. The first is to allow a 41-foot street easement with a 6-foot sidewalk and utility easement in lieu of the required 50-foot right-of-way. The 1996 agreement that's in force in the ETJ area. Does require normal 50-foot street right-of-way. This developer is requiring, or asking for this to be privately, a private street that'll be gated, 41-foot street width with 6-foot easement for the sidewalk and utilities. This is a common variance that has been approved in the past. Recently was Castle Hills Golf Course addition phases 1, 2, and 3 are similar to this. Staff is not opposed to this variance request. Second variance is to waive the alley requirement for lots less than 10,000 square feet in area. This proposed subdivision will not meet that requirement. The lot sizes range from 4,099 square feet to 7,893 square feet. But again, this is a common variance that has been approved in the past with the Castle Hills 1, 2, and 3. They like to provide front entry that allows to have larger backyards, patio area for each unit. The third variant, and staff is recommending approval of that variance as well. The third variance is to allow for private streets in a gated community that the HOA will maintain. So this is a common variance again for phases 1, 2, and 3 of the golf course addition. They will provide devices that will be accessible for emergency vehicles. So the fire department, fire marshal's office has looked at this and is not against it. We are recommending approval of this variance as well. The final variance is to allow public utilities on an easement under private paving. This will be, normally our utilities will be under a public right-of-way, but this is a subsequent variance that we have to ask for to allow the private streets. We are not opposed to this variance as well. Is there any questions about the variance?
So if the utilities are under the private street within development and something goes wrong, who pays for the pavement
The
changes?
The pavement repairs are normally paid by, I would say, the freshwater district. They'll maintain it for now, and then it would probably be the city's maintenance
The city after that.
later. Once it's annexed later, it would be my.
Does that include the demolition as well? Getting to it as well as repairing it and?
Yeah, if there's any,
Recovering it?
if it's a repair and if
Okay.
it's under the pavement, certainly there'll be a spot where we'll damage that concrete for the street. We'll probably have to take out the whole panel and replace it where it's
Sure.
a nice patch.
Anything else? Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
This time we'll open up a public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak on the Castle Hills Realm West, please come forward, sign in, and state your name. All right, having no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, discussion, concerns, comments? All right, may I have a motion then?
Move to approve with 4 variances.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mary Ellen, seconded by Alvin. Those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. All right. public
Chairman
hea-
Davis?
Yes, sir.
This item will be considered by the City Council on Monday, June the 6th, 2016, at 7 o'clock p.m.
Thank you, sir. All right, item 5, public hearing for zoning and special use permits. 5A is public hearing for consideration of a zone change request from Light Industrial District, L1, to a planned development single-family residential district, which is PD-R-5, for the proposed residential development consisting of 75 lots for single-family detached dwelling units and 8 open space lots. This is on approximately 15.665 acre tract. It's out of the G.C. Woolsey Survey, abstract number 1402, located on the southeast corner of Denton Tap Road and East Vista Ridge Mall Drive. As requested by Dowdy Anderson and Associates Incorporated on behalf of Hawkeye Realty, Campbell Ranch LP, the property owner. This is case number PZ 2016-05-14. Richard?
I'd first like to ask our AV staff to turn on the presentation from the laptop, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, want to go over the surrounding property. On your screen is an aerial photograph of the site. This 15-acre site is currently zoned LI, and to the north, let me go ahead and begin that slideshow. Bear with me one moment. There we go. To the north is a vacant parcel that is the future home of Mary Kay's new research and production facility. To the east and the south, you have multifamily development. And then to the west, you have a vacant property that is the site of a church that will soon be under development. This development was patterned after the Hills of Vista Ridge community just to the east on both the north and south sides of Vista Ridge and Mall Drive. This development is being presented as a planned development. The planned development district allows for innovative community design concepts that are basically customized for that site. It is associated with a base zoning district, and in this case, the base zoning district is our single-family 5 district, which means that the lots will have a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet. Overall, the next slide shows the concept plan, and the concept contains 75 lots. There is a central open space here towards the middle. There are also enhanced entry features on both entrances, both off of Denton Tap Road and Vista Ridge Mall Drive. The minimum dwelling unit size has been increased from the base district to 2,000 square feet with a provision that 25% of the homes will be allowed to be 1,700 square feet. Other distinguishing standards that is included in the plan development include wood-clad garage doors, decorative driveways, also exterior finishes. There's a specification that a minimum of 75% of all exterior walls will be masonry, with 100% of the front facade being masonry. There's also another requirement that any wall facing of a home facing Denton Tap or Vista Ridge Mall Drive will be 100% brick or stone. Also, all units are mandated to have a 2-car garage. The builder of this community is Pulte Homes, and as I mentioned earlier, they are currently building homes in the Hills of Vista Ridge just to the east. The units will be a maximum of 2.5 stories or 35 feet. Front yard setbacks are 20 feet. Side yards are 5 feet with 10-foot sides adjacent to a street. And then the rear yards range between 10 and 15 feet. The lot coverage is 60%. There is an illustration on, well, first before I get to the screening walls, the applicant has provided some examples of some of the elevations. I believe some of these are very similar to what they're building in the Hills of Vista Ridge. This is a detail of the open space lot. It'll contain a pathway, an arbor, some tables and chairs, and then some seating areas, and then a kind of an open play area. So that will be an amenity for the development. This is a detail of the entry feature off of Denton Tap Road. Also, one thing that the applicant addressed is as you enter, instead of having headlights shine onto the side of a home here, they are providing a screening wall with kind of an entry feature there so that as you enter, you'll be entering into the, or at least the terminus of that entryway into the development will be at a screening wall with some landscaping instead of the side of a home. And as far as screening, this is their screening elevation. I believe the green will be ornamental fencing. There's a few spots along the red, which is the required masonry wall that's required between a multifamily and single family. They are providing some areas that will allow drainage to pass through. And then the blue will be enhanced masonry walls with stone columns along both of the street frontages. There are 5 variances that are associated with this plan development that will be considered by the City Council. A is to allow Street A, and I'll go back to the concept plan. Street A to have a minimum centerline offset of 20 feet to the centerline of Street H, which is the street right here. Item B is to allow Street G to have a minimum centerline offset of 20 feet to the centerline of Street H. Item C is to allow the median distance along Vista Ridge Mall Drive to be a minimum of 320 feet in lieu of the required 350 feet. Item D is to allow non-90-degree intersections and to allow a street curvature within 35 feet of a residential intersection. And item E is to allow a lot width of less than 75 feet or a residential street intersects with an arterial street. These are basically triggered by the infill nature of this site. With this project was really confined with the geometry of the site, and therefore these variances were triggered. Staff has looked at these and has worked with the applicant, and we have no objection. So we will be recommending that the council approve those variance requests in conjunction with the zoning change. In summary, the purpose of the Plan Development Zoning District is basically to provide a customized, innovative design concept for a particular site and to provide a little bit of more flexibility, but at the same time to provide a more desirable development. This site is truly an infill property in a highly desirable location within the city. The proposal offers a variety of single-family housing larger than most existing housing stock in Louisville and is in alignment with the new neighborhood choices provision of the Louisville 2025 plan. Staff recommends approval of the zone change request from LI to PD R5 for Willowbrook plan development as requested. The applicant is present and has a brief presentation. But before I bring them up, I'll be glad to entertain any questions from the commission.
No, I guess not. Okay.
Okay, let me go ahead and bring up their presentation. Give me one moment. Go. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tracy Shannon Kilmer. I work with Dowdy Anderson and Associates. We office out of 5225 Village Creek Drive, Plano, Texas, 75093. Richard has done an excellent and very detailed job tonight explaining our request for our zoning change for the Willowbrook development, so I'm going to be very brief. As you know, the site is limited. It's an infill site, and as Richard mentioned, we have worked with staff to create as much flexibility as we can with the planning department and engineering department, especially regarding the variances that Richard just detailed out for you. As he mentioned, there are 75 residential lots and 8 open space, drainage, and utility lots proposed for this site. especially along the buffers for Vista Ridge Mall Drive as well as Denton Tap. We've provided the landscape buffers and enhanced entries there to soften as you are driving along both of those arteries into and out of Louisville and Coppell. We wanted to be able to create more of an ambiance there before coming into the site itself. As Richard also mentioned, we provided a buffer off of the entry to Denton Tap Road so that headlights are not shining straight onto the side of the homes. There is a buffer there that will be some enhanced landscape. Do you have? No, I just couldn't get the mouse to go.
It's acting tricky.
Okay, there it is. Okay, here's my mouse. Off of our Denton Tap entry, you can see the landscape buffer here, as well as the open space that Richard showed you the detailed site plan for, to provide more of a pocket park opportunity for residents to be able to go, relax, throw the ball, anything of that nature. As you can see, we have provided a chart outlining the differences in the traditional R5 zoning district, as well as what was provided in the Hills at Vista Ridge Phases 1 and 2 to our northeast, our sister development, if you will. We are falling right in line with the required minimum setbacks. We've increased that from the 15-foot that was provided in Hills at Vista Ridge to the 20-foot. That is the standard. I'm sorry. We're proposing the 20 feet. If you notice, the setback for the minimum for the garage in Hills at Vista Ridge was 20 from the 15 for the face of the garage, so that's why in this project we went ahead and made that, or are requesting to make that 20. Let's see, we are falling in line with the minimum lot areas as well as several of the other required setbacks and so forth. If you have any questions, please feel free to jump right on in.
Mine are probably for Jeff, but turn lanes or traffic flow from both roads? Any?
The traffic, well, on Denton Tap, there's an existing median opening and left turn lane for the proposed street. So we're in good shape there. There's no problems there. The access to Vista Ridge Mall Drive, there is an existing median. It's kind of a transition area where Vista Ridge Mall Drive transitions from a divided roadway to like a 4-lane collector roadway to the east. So there will be some modification to the end of that median nose to allow turning movements out of the proposed street to go westbound on Vista Ridge Mall Drive. But that's kind of a minor improvement that they would have to make. We don't see a problem with the access or this being an issue or creating a problem with our streets.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions yet? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump forward one slide. You've seen these images in the previous presentation, but I wanted to touch on one of the items that we are proposing for our square footage is putting a percentage on the allowable 1,700 square foot units is based off of the sales responses that Pulte is receiving from the Hills at Vista Ridge. There are empty nesters that are requesting the smaller home square footage, more of the single-story units. So that is why we want to allow that in this PD. Any other questions?
Tracy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This time we'll open up a public hearing, Anyone that wishes to speak on this subject, please come forward, sign your name, and state your name. All right, having no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, comments? I personally like that, the location and the development. All right, if not, may I have a motion?
A motion to approve.
Motion approved by John,
Second.
seconded by Mary Ellen. Those in favor, aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, this item will be considered by the City Council, who will hold a public hearing on Monday, June the 20th, 2016, at 7 o'clock p.m.
Thank you. Okay, the next is 5B. It's a public hearing, consideration of a zone change request from Agriculture Open Space District AO to Medical District MD on approximately 2.592 acre tract. It's out of the Lou Burgoyce Survey, abstract number 52, located on the southwest corner of South Euchre Lane and Oakland Drive at 2276 South Euchre Lane, as requested by the Gathering Vista Ridge LLC on behalf of Doyle Leon Atchley, the property owner. This is case number PZ 2016-05-15. Richard?
Thank you, Chairman Davis. First, I'm going to go a little bit over the background of the property that we have here. This is a very, I guess you call a rare gem in Louisville. Most of Louisville has fairly consistent size neighborhoods. Most lots kind of average around 7,500 square feet. This is actually a neighborhood that was developed back in the early 1960s and 1970s with lots that range in little over 1 acre to 5 acres in size. There's about 14 parcels situated along South Euchre and East Euchre lanes. It also is covered with mature native trees, which makes it very prudent to plan this area in a very prudent way to save as many trees as possible. As far as surrounding land uses and zoning, you have to the north you have multifamily. Uses zone multifamily 2 across Oak Bend Lane. To the south of the subject site, you have additional large lot, single family zone, agricultural open space. Further south, you have some local retail zoning or local commercial zoning along FM 3040. To the east, there's additional single family residential on large lots. There are some office development zoned LI along Rockbrook Drive. And then to the west of this site, you have Oak Bend Park. It's zoned public use. There's also additional multifamily to the southwest, zone multifamily 2. As far as the zoning history, this neighborhood has been subject to 2 previous zone change requests. Those requests have either been denied or withdrawn due to neighborhood opposition or due to the fragmented nature of the development proposal not meeting the city's long-range plans. Developers, including this applicant and realtors, have been advised of the lack of staff support for fragmented development. So that is kind of the major focus of staff's concerns, is the fragmented nature. I do want to start off, though, by applauding the applicant for bringing forth this type of housing. Staff is absolutely not against senior housing, especially independent living units. Staff agrees that there is definitely a need for this type of housing, especially with our senior population growing. Also, our Louisville 2025 plan does call for a variety of different housing types. So the staff does support this type of housing style and this type of development, but the problem is the location and the approach taken, how it relates to this overall area. This area covers about 27 acres, and it does have some definite redevelopment potential, but we have to be very, very careful that it is redeveloped very wisely and more holistically instead of piece by piece. Because when a development comes in piece by piece, you often, the end result is development that doesn't really relate to each other. So as I was saying, the proposal is not a good fit for the area and does not adhere to any applicable zoning district. That is another concern that staff has, is the MD zoning that is requested. The applicant is proposing a duplex residential community targeted to seniors with 12 duplexes ranging in size from 800 square feet to 1,350 square feet. And I believe the applicant did provide in your packet some illustrations of what the units would look like, shown here on the screen. And then this is kind of a conceptual layout that the applicant had in mind, with a entrance in the northwestern corner coming off of Oak Bend Drive, and another one on what is now Euchert Lane right-of-way. There's actually not a street there, so at least a partial street would have to be constructed to make that connection. The request for MD zoning primarily is to avoid a more appropriate zoning of either duplex or townhouse, which would lend itself more to this type of development. This proposal cannot meet the requirements of either of those districts and still yield the same number of units. It's really constrained by the geometry of the site. Similar project for seniors under construction at Summit Avenue north of Main Street. It's zoned a townhouse, but it has deed restrictions that limit it to seniors 55 years of age and older. It's also a private street development. That one was also more of an infill. It was a one vacant site with development all the way around it. The independent living facilities were added to the MD zoning district several years ago to accommodate assisted and independent senior living with 24-hour assistance, programs, and accommodations on site. This means that the accommodation should include a cafeteria for at least one meal a day, fitness facilities, organized classes for seniors, some form of a regular health care by a nurse or a doctor. It also could include a hairdresser or personal care, and the ability to provide transportation needs for the residents. So it's fairly exact in what is required. And in most of the existing facilities we have in town are in one building. There are some products out there that provide more of a community center with individual living units, but those are usually on a larger scale, and then they are typically planned developments. I believe if this were to cover the entire 27 acres, ultimately, and it could be phased, it would be more appropriate for this site. As I mentioned earlier, the proposal is truly a duplex development without meeting the minimum development standards of the duplex zoning district in terms of lot size, setbacks, and minimum dwelling unit size. Again, that would be another issue that makes it difficult to meet the standards of that district. Also, I want to touch on some of the concerns about fragmented development. It could really negatively impact the overall development plan for that area very, very long term. This neighborhood has been intact for over 50 years, and it provides a very unique, large lot living neighborhood in an urban area. This is very exceptional in Louisville. The neighborhood, it would be better for this neighborhood to remain intact as it is for a long time, and it can meet the needs of the current residents or any future residents wanting to move to Louisville and have a desire for large lots at this location. A time will come when the property could be ripe for redevelopment, either as an office, mixed use, or a residential plan development, but it should encompass the entire 27 acres. The long-range plan for the area is for all the properties to be combined into a cohesive development in order to take advantage of its strategic location, which is close to transportation arteries. It's close to very convenient retail and office developments. And also another big fact would be that developing it all together, you could take a look at the natural features and protect the natural characters of the site. Also want to make the commission aware that the city council gave staff direction at the retreat in March to start developing special area plans in conjunction with a community character manual to implement the Louisville 2025 plan in a systematic manner. This area will be a part of the overall Vista Ridge Mall area plan. That plan will define the overall character of the neighborhood. It'll identify potential for new development. It will also identify improvements that are needed to existing infrastructure, and it will identify what would really be the best fit as far as the 9 big moves that are identified in the 2025 plan. Once this plan is developed and adopted, the various pieces could be phased in over time independently of the other phases with the knowledge of the overall plan that will be the end result of that effort. It'd be like completing a puzzle. You know what all of the pieces of the puzzle, how they're going to fit together once that puzzle is done. But if you, and again, another way to describe fragmented development is where you take just random puzzle pieces and try to fit them together, and that is usually almost entirely impossible. So in summary, the proposal is a fragmented development. It does not reflect the highest and best use of the property and is not consistent with the long-range goals of the Louisville 2025 plan. The proposal would be far more appropriate in other locations within the city where there are opportunities where it could serve as an infill project that could be integrated into an existing neighborhood with a similar density and character. Staff recommends denial of the zoning change request for agricultural open space to medical district for this site. Before I turn it over to the applicant, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
This is on the corner of South Euchre and Oakland Drive. The 2.59 acres, does that restrict the rest of the property on either one of those roads? Access to the remaining 24 acres?
Let me see if I understand your question. Is it an access question, restricted to access just
Yeah.
off Oak Bend?
And view and...
Like I said, as I mentioned earlier, there is right-of-way on the eastern boundary of this site for South Euchre Lane. And again, part of the long-range plan will be to identify what roadways will need to be built. The street system is rather incomplete in this area. Euchre Lane does come from the south from 3040 past East Euchre, and then it kind of meanders over onto the private property more as a private driveway. That's primarily how this the residents on this site is accessing the property. I don't believe they have any access from Oak Bend. But if this site were to develop, they would have to, in order to meet the minimum standards of the general development ordinance, they would have to construct at least half or a 20-foot wide section of Euchre Lane from Oak Bend south along the limits of that property, so that there would be adequate fire access, access for emergency vehicles, and so forth.
Okay.
What other types of businesses, I guess, would be considered in a medical district? Like, what would be other uses for this type of zoning?
Medical district is typically for hospitals, which usually need a much larger site, or clinics, medical, doctor's offices. Those are the, typically allowed by right in the medical district. And again, assisted and independent living centers are also allowed by right in this district. But again, they have to meet, the setbacks and minimum lot size, all of the standard parameters for the zoning district, and all of the subdivision requirements and infrastructure requirements of the general development ordinance. And like I said, that's why staff feels it would be more prudent to have a plan for the overall area, because there are some infrastructure deficiencies, and it'll be hard to accomplish that in a coordinated manner if just small pieces are developed one at a time without a relationship to each other.
So is there any kind of an effort to do that coordination with the other owners?
As that plan is developed, part of the public involvement process is to reach out to the stakeholders, which would include the property owners and the residents of that area. So that is something that'll be underway here in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead and give me one moment, and I will turn on the slideshow for the applicant. There is one final comment I did want to make, and Nika did ask me to share this with you. Many of you were involved with the process of developing the Louisville 2025 plan. There was one slide that she wanted to remind all of you of. I have it here on the screen, and it recites a Japanese proverb, and it states that vision without action is a daydream, but action without vision is a nightmare. And this process builds upon past successes. So many of you who were involved with the 2025 plan will probably recall the discussion around that slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
And with that, give me one moment for the slideshow to come up. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Chair, as indicated, I'm going to share the presentation with Mr. Rainwater.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jack Rainwater, and Mr. Tabor has enlisted my help to present some of the initial information and general aspects of the plan. He's hoping for approval tonight from the Planning and Zoning Commission, as he contends that the site itself is consistent with the Vision 2025 plans and for the neighborhood and for the zoning that's being requested. If you'll look here, you can see also again another example of the look of the unit construction there in the lower left-hand corner. On this next slide, it's a collection that we can look at the site location. And if you'll notice from the aerial photograph, the distribution of trees throughout the site. In fact, his site, I've seen the design of it, it appears to make a concerted effort to utilize the trees within that corner where the property is located. And the rest of the properties surrounding it, being AO, are generally not as thickly populated with trees as the rest of the area around. And then you see the location of the property on the overall map in the lower right-hand corner. Up at the top right-hand corner is a significant map showing the zoning of the area. As correctly indicated, there's MF2 to the north, and then you see, I believe they had designated that as a PU, public use, but I'm not sure because the zoning plan indicates it as City Park, CP, for the park that's in that area. Seems to make consistent sense. And you see the retail area, commercial area that's located to the south of the AO zoning, and just that little piece up in the northern, northwestern portion is the actual subject property. And then you see the light industrial that surrounds the neighborhood. Also to point out, the applicant made this observation. He was indicating that next to that bowling alley across the street where you see that pink color is its own MD zoning. So it's not inconsistent to say that MD zoning is an appropriate fit, and as you can see, it looks to be either about the same size or a little bit smaller than 2.5 acres. On the next slide is showing city household characteristics. Y'all are pretty familiar with this, I'm sure, as you put together this plan. But it indicates a substantial portion of the city's residents are single-person households. Now, of course, that's divided between younger single persons and elder single persons. But that being the case, it indicates that there's a significant need for assisted living facilities like the project at hand. The bottom map, once again, is from your 2025, indicating major components of the land use. And if you'll notice the subject property, I believe on the next slide you can see it a little bit more clearly, but it's in that lower corner on the west side of town in the southern portion. And this map is indicating the thriving neighborhoods section as indicated by the comprehensive plan, or that is to say the Vision 2025. Most of the existing residential development that's described in there as thriving neighborhoods would encompass this particular area of town, along with other larger areas to the north and west. And the mall, Vista Ridge Mall area has had investigation. You see in the outline of green where the actual AO zoning is located within the context of Vista Ridge Mall. Of course, once the plan comes to fruition, the main point to be taken from that is that it needs to remain consistent with Vision 2025. And that's a good point to make, because this plan that the applicant's going to be presenting in greater detail in just a second here is going to reiterate that support for Vision 2025. This is a thoroughfare plan showing Euchre and its connection to the thoroughfare system. As it is right now, y'all are aware that the road doesn't connect, and the staff has indicated that the property owner will be placing, I believe it's about 187 feet to connect the Oakland with the rest of Euchre there. This improvement is an important starting point for the overall thoroughfare plan for that area. And then the compatibility of the project is based upon examining the overall plan itself and making thorough consideration of any future plans, like the Vista Ridge Mall area study and neighborhood compatibility study that will occur in the future. But it's not inconsistent to consider this case independent of it, because it hasn't been developed yet, as long as it's consistent with the overall plan. In other words, if the studies are going to be based on the overall plan, then you should be consistent with the overall plan, and the eventual studies that will come about will be also compatible with it. All right, on the next slide, I'm going to introduce the applicant, Mr. Chip Tabor. He's been employed for 35 years at a Fortune 500 food and beverage corporation. He's a 10-year resident of Louisville and a 25-plus year resident, including the surrounding communities. He's active in local homeowners associations. He's the owner of multiple rental properties, including 2 in Louisville. And he's currently completing the redevelopment of property on North Garden Ridge in Louisville and opening a 20-room assisted living facility. And now I give it over to Mr. Tabor.
Thank you, Mr. Rainwater.
Thank you, Jack. Good evening, Commissioners, and Richard and June. Thanks for your time this evening. I was thinking about that Japanese proverb, and I was in a daydream a couple of months ago and having some pretty successful conversations, I thought, with the city And then my nightmare hit when I found out that it wasn't going to be supported, so I enlisted Mr. Rainwater's consulting experience from about 20 years in planning in the Metroplex, just to kind of help me think about this project a little bit more, and look at it from both not just an individual development perspective, but trying to look at it from how the city would from a planning perspective. I do appreciate Richard's acknowledgement of the need for other senior housing in the area. We probably both think this can be a positive part of Louisville's future development activities. Many of us are probably living it or aware of the statistic of the 10,000 baby boomers that are turning 65 every day. So whether it's the previous project that made a reference to empty nesters or something like this, there is certainly a growing demand. As I've researched and been involved in some things with senior living over the last 2+ years, first off, I've had very productive and supportive relationships with the planning team, with the engineering team, with building services and fire here, as they have educated me along the way in the development process for the assisted living. And we'll get past the great state of Texas inspection issues in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully be ready to open in about a month, and would invite you to come by and check out our facility. But I've become much more aware of the trends and things that are happening in senior living. Baby boomers have changed a lot of the way people think, work, and act over their lifetime. And I think it'll be no different in the area of senior living. And so some of the trends that they appear to be driving are smaller homes, number one, things called hybrid homes, which are a mix of maybe a little bit of apartment and home living. They seem to like pocket neighborhoods, as well as even some downtown type of CCR. I've educated myself as the continuing care types of communities. And so there's a lot of changes that are taking place there. But some key factors that I've learned as far as what people are looking for, in the past, independent living, assisted living has been a very bundled kind of service. But boomers and others are asking it to be broken apart and be more a la carte in the types of services that they request, and more importantly, that they want to pay for. Yet they're still looking for that sense of community with other seniors, ease of access to various activities. But one of the biggest things that they're doing is trying to reduce or eliminate the risk or the responsibility of maintaining a property, and that's one of the things that we would be doing in taking a rental approach, to this project, as opposed to a project or house that someone would still buy and then be responsible for. Some research. Our friends down at Texas A&M say that there's going to be another 400,000 people over age 65 in the Metroplex by 2030. And then there's been several other studies that have talked about downsizing and trading in home maintenance for community living as a key trend for seniors. Just to acquaint you with what's in the Louisville area today for independent living, Louisville Estates, I think, was built sometime back in the 90s. DCAD didn't seem to quite have that information, or Denton County Appraisal District. You have Franklin Park in 2003, the Evergreen Louisville in 2005 timeframe, followed by another Evergreen at Vista Ridge in 2010, and out toward Castle Hills, there's also Discovery Village. All very appropriate and useful places for independent living. Most of them are pretty full, from what I can tell in the research that I've done. They're all 100+ unit, communities, and if you kind of look at them and didn't have the names there, you might or might not know, which is which, just because they're pretty much all 3-story buildings with the same general look and feel, same basic concept. And there's really no other alternative to this type of independent living, in the Louisville area. I found a few, such as this duplex type of community that are starting to emerge. There's one over in Frisco, and there's some things south of Dallas. But it's really kind of an early trend and maybe a kind of leading edge concept for a different type of independent living. Your packet included most of this information that I have on the next page here, so I won't bore you with reading through it again. But this is a community that would be really targeted for senior adults over age 62 that still want to, that do want to simplify their lives, but remain engaged with friends and the community. And so we're thinking that the cottages would be designed in a very open, accessible manner. They'd have a single monthly payment for housing, utilities, and other services for maintenance. Participate in activities as they desire, or lock and leave if they care to. There'll be some monitoring things that would be built in, to the homes to provide access and to meet their needs as their evolving daily needs change. And again, just kind of the bottom there, the one price budgeting that people can count on for the services that they would like to have within this community. I've shared this concept with the residents that are in the area, and I want to thank most all of the residents that are in the area for attending here tonight. This is a parcel map, and as we talked about this community over the last month, we knew it was very important for the commission to understand the level of neighborhood support, because it was referenced that in the past the neighbors had not supported certain things, and they've talked about the things that they didn't support previously. And so your zoning packet includes a list of signatures that were gathered at a neighborhood meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. I just mapped it out. Everyone that signed the form is in green there. The person that owns the parcel there in yellow, I do not see Dr. Hussein here tonight. He bought that, I think it was in June of last year, and I have spoken with him verbally, and he indicated his verbal support to me, but he's not here to attest to that tonight. But otherwise, and also the parcel that's to the right of the yellow, is an individual whose address is a P.O. box in Fort Worth, and the phone number goes to a Magic Jack voicemail that I've tried to call and leave a message. Person with a similar name owns a house in Dallas and one in Fort Worth per the tax records, but still have not been able to contact her to see how she feels about this. But we do have wide support and strong support from the broader community there. Richard outlined for you the objections, and he and I and Nika have talked about some of those along the way. And I'll just very quickly try to cover these points here. He talked about the things that we did not comply with from the zoning. I would draw your attention to the middle of the page. I've simply copied the medical district zoning from the ordinance 17-20 that's a part of the municipal code on the city's website. And it says assisted living or independent living units limited to persons ages 55 and above, and including programs such as, and it has a number of programs there, and I've highlighted the ones that we think that would be a part of the services that would clearly be offered within the community as we have it designed now. We do have a community center where on-site doctor's visits could take place. There'd be craft and games programs and beauty and barber services available there, on-site entertainment, and other kinds of activities. So there's a reference that you had to be a certain large community, and that a single meal per day was required and things like that. I'm not seeing that in the zoning ordinance, and so that's a part of my representation to you that this project would in fact comply with the zoning ordinance as I see it written here. I think another key point is that, and we discussed this in two different DRC meetings, is that the medical district zoning guarantees the type of project that would be built here. A duplex or a townhome type of zoning could change as things progress through the development process, but certainly there'd be no question that with medical district, this is the only type of project that would be here, because in senior living, your medical district will either support an assisted living center such as I'm building now, a memory care center, which is similar to what I have, or this independent type of living. Those are the three things that I believe fit the medical district zoning here in Louisville. The second part of staff's objection is around the fragmented development. As has been discussed, that's a plan that is really to come at some point in time in the future. And so developers or residents are not quite sure how to react to that, but we find no public record of any type of plan that exists for the area today. So what is the real timeline that even the residents could count on for how and when this plan will be development? And staff makes comments to a number of different types of things there between the large lot living, the office, mixed use, or open or planned development. So from that perspective, a lot of different things could fit into those types of uses. So not really quite sure where to ultimately take that. And so my perspective is that as Richard stated, this is a 27-acre parcel, obviously a pretty good sized piece of land still left here in the community. This particular lot, as you've seen on the various maps that have been made available to you, is in the northwest corner of the property. And so what happens here, it's not like it's sitting in the middle of the territory and is going to have a very negative effect on other things that could come in around it. It's got the street on one side of it. It's got the park on one side of it. It's going to have another street on the other side of it, and then it shares a border with the yellow lot that I had highlighted earlier. So I don't think it really limits or fragments the overall develop that could take place here. And of course, I'll have the privilege of providing that 20-foot roadway access that needs to get things going there. And I think that this medical district can be a good transition from the multifamily and other things that are surrounding it. And there's already a medical district zoning at Oak Bend and Rockbrook where the Arbor Creeks memory care facility is. And so from our perspective, the independent living project and the roadway that it will build can be a catalyst to really get people to start thinking about and potentially accelerate the development in this area. 2 pages here, and I'll be done so we can get to other things. I'm not going to read the top paragraph as far as Louisville 2025. I'm sure you're all intimately familiar with it. The things that, as I became more intimately familiar with it in the last few months, diversity that it talks about on page 25 of that report for a range of housing options, be it design, location, ownership, and price. And then new neighborhood choices were referenced on page 52. So expanded neighborhood options for all ages and incomes, reference to empty nesters, and then in order for Louisville to stay competitive with demographic trends and live, work units, granny flats, new term for me, and retirement communities and different types of products should be promoted, I think was the information that I found there. And so as I wrap up here, there's a comment about this is not the highest and best use, and it's not consistent with the long-range goals of Louisville 2025. This highest and best use terminology gets thrown around a lot. Projects of any other use are subjective, and the timing is unknown at this point in time. This project has a willing seller and a willing buyer. It's real and viable type of use that we think is good for the community. And it has an estimated value of at least $4 million by the time we fully develop all the infrastructure and the housing units on it. We also think that it represents land use as consistent with 2025. It does address that diversity and puts Louisville on the leading edge of a new and more unique approach to a growing senior population, and then promotes a new and thriving neighborhood for those active adults and empty nesters. And we hope to have some people in a granny flat there. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor. This time we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak, please come forward, sign in, and state your name.
Good evening. I'm Patsy Whitmer, and I guess I was the first settler on Euchre Lane. We came from Dallas in 1956. Some members of my family and my husband and I decided to leave Dallas and purchase property to the north. We love Dallas, I still do, but after a busy day in the restaurant business, we wanted to come home to a more country-like setting. We took the Round Grove exit off of 35 and found just the property that we wanted. It was a German settlement full of some of the nicest people that you could ever meet. We purchased our property, which was and is still on the northwest side of Round Grove Road. We each built our homes on 1.5 acre tracts and later sold the rest. We had a gravel road extended from Henry Euchre's house, the little white house that sits on Euchre Lane. I'm right next to his house. We extended the road, which was a gravel road, in front of all of our houses. We were not in the city as of yet. We got to name the street, and we named it Euchre Lane after Henry Euchre. My husband, Max, passed away 4 years ago. I'm still in my home. I would like to know that I would be able to sell if I had to, without restrictions. I'm here in support of the rezoning at 2276. I'm at 2328. I'm the opposite end. I just hope that when I get ready to sell, if I have to, there will not be restrictions on my selling of my house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name's John Wilson. I live next to Patsy at 2316 South Euchre Lane. This is the second time I've been up here to a meeting with you all about rezoning and trying to figure out what's the best use of this property. We've lived there for 10 years. We're kind of the new kids on the block. And, there's some issues with some of these things that have been talked about, so I'll just cover those real briefly. And this was really just some top-of-mind things during this meeting, so I'm not really super prepared, so I apologize for that. But first off, I think there is already fragmentation going on because there is a new office park. You can see it would be to the south of the lot that is in green here, called Mira Vista Office Park. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. There's one unit that's already been built. I don't know where that zoning came from. I don't know how that occurred without us really even knowing about it. They tore down a bunch of trees, and we've got one building stuck there, and it's behind the retail. There's an L-shaped retail that faces Round Grove, and now behind that, there's one building out of 7. I just looked it up on Google, and anyway, so that's already there, and I think it's called, maybe it's going to be for medical, I'm not sure, but it's called Mira Vista. Then you have these on Rockbrook, the corner of Euchre and Rockbrook. There's 2 buildings that are somewhat office buildings. They're Timber Lane or something like that on the corner of Euchre, where we come out on this on the slide. You can see where we exit the neighborhood, either out to Round Grove or over to Rockbrook on this, to the east there. And you can see those 2 buildings. So we've already got some things going on in this neighborhood, and with us being zoned agricultural, it does somewhat put us at a disadvantage to having the ability to be attractive to someone that may want to do a total package on this thing. We just saw another proposal for 15 acres, putting 75 homes on there. I know there's Rushes over here, we're talking about wanting to, there was somebody interested in the property that is in the quadrant from Round Grove, Euchre, that whole section over to Rockbrook on that southeast corner of this property. So we're all kind of limited or kind of in a little bit of a zone. And to say that this is like great for these large lots and all this, I mean, our house is 60 years old. It's not mid-century modern. It's not, you know, any of this like super like vintage or something that's going to be super attractive to just a buyer to come in and want it. It might be good for a tear down, build something there like that. So I guess that this proposal for medical district in the location down at the end of that Euchre, I would love to see Euchre finished off, and nobody can find us. I don't know about city services. The garbage people have to back down that little right-of-way lane just to get down to some of the houses down at the end down there, and the trees are overgrown. I mean, there's no maintenance down there. This public use area, that is just downright, if not, a little bit unsafe, at least it's scary. It's not well maintained. It's in some woods, and that could be done up a lot better with, that could maybe even incorporate into this project because it's right next to it. So there could be a walking path. There is some paths in there, but like I said, the trees are all overgrown. It's dark. There's coyotes down there. I mean, this is a forgotten land down there. And so I'm just basically giving you a little bit of my opinion after living there for 10 years that we've got houses that are littered with, out of order debris and house things and outbuildings. And, it would really be nice to see something get started down there, I guess is what I'm saying. And where the location that's down there by Oak Bend, it's at the very end, doesn't seem like it would be a big problem. And it might be the start of something, and then if it was designed in such a way that this could turn into a bigger medical district or something, that would be, maybe that's a plan that needs to be thought of as far as a long-term kind of a 2025 thing. This could be a bigger medical district with all these bells and whistles that have been talked about, but maybe this is the start of something. So I guess in conclusion that I'm supporting the proposal that he's making for this.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
My name is Ruetta Paris, and I owned, or used to own, the property that's in yellow up there. I sold it in June, and part of my problem was that I was in a situation where I needed to sell. I could not find a buyer who could meet the zoning requirements to build anything on my property. So I was forced, sort of, to sell to a individual who bought my land to hold it in the hopes that someday he could zone it to do something with it. I had to take a substantial, what I considered loss on the property when I sold it. But the main thing right now is that piece of property, the home is sitting there vacant. It's declining every day to the detriment of the whole area. The two houses that were there that when we moved in back in 1973, over the course of years, there's been two homes that were sitting there vacant, and vagrants moved in and burnt them down. And so it was it sits there, it's a potential hazard, I think, to my neighbors. It has a swimming pool that can turn into a nice frog pond if someone don't get in there and take it over. So I really, even though I don't have, as I told them, I don't have a horse in this race anymore, but I really feel like that this guy's got the right idea, and it would open the floodgates to help put something up there that Louisville could be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
My name is Robert Todd. I'm here in support of this zoning change. I'm 92 years old. I lived out there for 50 years. And the city of Louisville has done nothing for us at all. I live at 2274 Euchre Lane. And that street running in front of my house is rivaled by the Grand Canyon. It's got potholes that big around in it. And keep in mind that the city vehicles use that. Garbage trucks, mail trucks, and we pay our taxes. I'm in support of this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Todd.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Wilson. I'm not a resident of Louisville, but I am the real estate broker that has had the great honor and privilege to be among these people. 92 years old and here tonight. Wow. It's pretty amazing. I took on this project for Ruetta several years ago because her daughter is a veterinarian of mine. I don't have children, I have pets. Ruetta was the youngest person there. She had amazing documentation and history, and anything you needed, she could find it, she could catalog it. We had everything that would support the sale of that home. We couldn't get buyers that could develop it because they were told that whatever they wanted to develop would not be supported by staff. Her husband proceeded to get worse and had to go into assisted care. We had one person step forward that was willing to pay cash for the property and take it as is into future development. That was the only chance she had. She took it. These citizens come here as a unit. And I'm glad that she put that Japanese proverb up because there has been no plan of action, even though they have stood here before you asking for a plan of action. So I hope you do listen to them tonight. And I'm going to quote, not a proverb, but somebody else, my 87-year-old mother, who's still running the family farm in Virginia by herself, who says, God can't give you direction if you're not moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All right, anyone else? If not, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add, at the end of this discussion, if I could ask the kind folks that spoke, we do have a sign-up sheet, and that will assist staff in recording accurate minutes. Well, we need your name and your address for the minutes. If y'all could do that at your convenience after the meeting is ended, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, commissioners. Comments, concerns?
Let's try it here. I'll sit it right here in the corner.
I guess what discussions were, was there any suggestions by city staff about another site to which this project would be done?
Yes, our director, Nika Reineke, had several meetings with the applicant and had presented several other properties, one here in Old Town, I believe a couple other sites in the city that's more of an infill, smaller scale pieces of property. I think he had looked at them, but I think he decided he wanted to move forward with the site.
Okay.
John, yes, I did meet with.
Come up to the mic, please.
I guess the part of what I guess too is kind of, why this specific site, I guess, because it's not going to be, there's a fair amount of work in front of you in order to develop it the way you want, right?
Sure. I mean, there could be a fair amount of development, with any particular site. I guess from a density perspective, things appear a little more attractive on this particular site. There's one other, two other sites that I looked at. One is definitely a neighborhood in transition, and I don't think it's a neighborhood that would be attractive to a senior citizen market from a safety and security perspective. The other is less than half the size of this particular property. So with unless you want to go multi-story, which I'm not opposed to, but that requires elevators and a lot of other infrastructure and things. So every site has its unique challenges and opportunities and benefits. But I think just the look and feel of this type of neighborhood, I think, is something that people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s would be more comfortable with. Trees around the perimeter with the setbacks and things, we believe can maintain a fair number of trees, certainly around the perimeter of the property and things. And so just the overall neighborhood appeal. And a big rectangle works fairly well in general from a development perspective, although Mr. Weaver, I'm sure over here will find some other things I need to do on it. But so those are just some contributing factors that led me to stay with at least making a request and trying to gain your support for this particular request at this property.
I have a question. If let's just say worst case, and this is denied, will you scrap this project, or will you try to put it in another location?
First, I would explore whether this should go to City Council for a supermajority. And then I honestly don't know the answer to the question.
All the way through the process, and that was denied on that end as well. And it was denied you didn't get a supermajority vote in council and had to either choose to scrap this project or go to another location.
Well, I would, I've done a fair amount of due diligence on the economics, and I understand reasonably confidently the cost and benefits and the ROI, on this. I'd be starting from ground zero again. I mean, I've kind of halted all spending. I spent, at least, from my individual pocket, a fair amount coming up with concept plan and other things. That if I'd have known that this couldn't be fragmented development from the start, I probably wouldn't have spent that money. But I'm in now, so I'm going to see how the process works.
Thank you.
No, public hearing's closed.
Richard, keeping 2025 in mind, and what we, looked at and agreed upon, does the city have any plans for this property?
This general neighborhood is very high on the priority list of doing a small area plan.
Okay.
Just the interest, the input from the residents. We know that infrastructure is a really big problem in this area. We totally agree with these residents that something should be done. It was developed, when it was in the county, there were no standards, and the city kind of inherited that. As other neighborhoods grew up around it, those neighborhoods were developed, in accordance with our minimum standards. And I think a general plan for the overall 27 acres would go a long ways in filling in that question mark. What is brought before you tonight is a plan for a very small piece of this property. The rest of it is a big question mark. And I think being straight zoning, there is no guarantee that this plan would move forward. With straight zoning in place, if this developer decided to walk away, he could sell it to someone else that could build anything allowed in the MD district, which includes a daycare center, a nursing home, a doctor's office, or a retail establishment that sells medical facility or medical appliances. We think it would be much more appropriate if this came forward as a planned development. There are examples in this area of similar style senior cottages that are done on a larger scale, on about 25 acres. There's one in Highland Village under development. There's one in Keller that's almost completed on 20 acres. Very similar concept, but it was zoned as a planned development. The planned development gives the community the certainty of how the entire area will be developed. It's not leaving any gaps or question marks.
Okay, so why did we reject the idea of a planned development to going to medical district?
Planned development has to have a minimum of 5 acres.
I see, okay.
But again, we would recommend that, it seems like the applicant has developed a rapport with the neighbors, and they could, all they have to do is sign an application for a master plan for the whole area. At least that would provide the certainty, because right now it is a very big question mark on how the rest of that would develop and how the infrastructure would take place.
If the zoning does change, you said we inherited some of the things that were really outside of the normal development back in the day. If we change the zoning, does that next then bring everything else that goes forward with that up into the standards?
It's kind of the first step. Platting is what brings the actual details for the infrastructure. But platting has to be done in accordance with the zoning on the ground. So like I said, the zoning is the first step.
Okay.
For this site, right? This little park.
Just for the 2.5 acres, not the overall 27. I think the other 24.5 acres would still be a question mark.
Anything else? Okay, I guess at this time we'll entertain a motion.
I would recommend denial to City Council on this plan.
Second.
Okay, recommend denial by Sean, seconded by Alvin. Those in favor signify aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
We have two, was that
Opposed.
two nays?
I'm opposed.
Yeah, 2 nays, he and I.
Okay, so it's 2 for and 2 against. Wait a minute, I didn't
Gotta
vote.
vote.
We didn't vote.
I'd be 4, so 3 for the motion and 2 to deny it.
The recommendation of denial from the P&Z will be considered by the City Council on Monday, June the 20th, 2016 at 7:00 p.m. It'll be a second public hearing.
Okay, thank you. All right, having no other scheduled topics, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Alvin, seconded by Sean. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.